All right, g'day everyone. I've got Dave C. to go with Dave King or Dave C.
Yeah, either
And
or.
the reason I got him on today is um, just a bit of a chat. We obviously have a lot of chats sort of offline. And I don't know, when was the last time we did a video together, mate? It was a little while ago, and a fair bit's happened since
Yeah, it was
then.
ages
I
ago.
just thought, yeah, just
Yeah.
thought we'd collaborate some ideas, but I also wanted to you to sort of go into your story because what I really like about you is you're very um, introspective. And I think I've told people before I really loved like Mike Tyson's autobiography, and a lot of people like that. And the reason I liked Mike Tyson is because he's a very very flawed individual, but he's
Right.
but he's also extremely honest and really really introspective. So yeah, I really you've definitely got that quality and having the ability to sort of look at yourself and your own flaws and your own journey and where you got to be where you are now, and with a real sort of humbleness. So I'll just say, yeah, how you been going at the moment? Like you're over in WA. What have you what have you been noticing lately since we sort of last had a chat, or in the last couple of weeks?
Nothing over here, to be honest. I mean, the biggest thing I've seen in the last few weeks, I suppose, would be the last rally. I didn't go to it, but the last two rallies have been pretty big. And now that McGowan's announced the mandate for pretty much everyone, I would imagine that the next one is going to be even bigger, right? And and they've organised some impromptu ones over the last pretty much every week. There's been at least a couple on. They've all had a fairly good turnout considering how short notice they've been. So, yeah, I would imagine the next one is going to be huge. And I'm actually going to be singing at it as well. So that'll be
Oh
fun.
shit! Well,
Yeah.
I might get into that later too because that's the other thing I like about you too. Because I was having a chat with someone recently and just about me sort of withdrawing a little bit from the drama at times when I can, and the best way of doing that is being creative. And we know
Mm,
that's the opposite of what they want. And I mean, yeah, some of your music's bloody brilliant. I know that's your real
thanks.
passion too, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
I've written a
yeah,
lot of songs about, uh, I've got some other ones coming out, but I've written a lot of songs about obviously what's going on in the world and different things. So yeah, there'll be some interesting lyrical content coming out in the next few months.
that's what, and yeah, like we've been deprived of conscious music for a long time. I mean, particularly in pop and the mainstream,
Oh,
but
yeah.
it's always
Yeah.
sort of been there, hasn't it? Um,
In some ways, yeah, for sure.
yeah, but it really got depraved in the late '90s. I think they really flicked the switch when they put the bubblegum pop and all that sort of shit in. So look, I'd love to see a
Yeah.
revival, like in the future, of like really of conscious music, because music has a power in itself, and then when you add those conscious lyrics to it, it's fucking powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I went to, when I was living in London, there was a thing called Hot Dub Time Machine. And basically,
Oh, I
they,
like that movie.
yeah, kind of, yeah, it was called Hot Dub.
Oh,
And
oh,
so, yeah, it's kind of like the movie. And basically, what they did was they just played one song from every year for like 50, I don't know how many years. It was a lot, like 40, 50 years or something. And then you could just watch, like when they hit like the early 2000s or late 90s, just music just went through the floor, like all these great songs. And then that were popular back in the day, some of the big bands, which, you know, take it or leave it, they probably were involved in something, right? Something bad. But uh, you just watch the quality of the music. You got Queen on one hand, and then you've got what we're seeing now, or you've been hearing now.
it's been completely bastardized, really, hasn't it? In the last
Yeah,
years.
yeah.
But anyway, I saw yesterday. I don't know if you know Adrian D'Amico. He did an interview with Robert Kennedy, and Robert Kennedy put up a thing today about a worldwide protest on November 3rd. And I don't know if that's because I've seen some stuff in Melbourne. So yeah, hopefully
Okay.
it's going to be a big thing. But yeah, anyway, so if we're going into like sort of your awakening experience, where do you want to start with that? And I mean, you can go all the way back to when you were a kid. Were you sort of like a questioning mind? Did you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've always been interested in aliens and UFOs. I think that's probably kind of where it started. I would say, and my
Don't worry.
grandfather had this book, one of these books I've got here, this UFO book. Mum got a hold of it, and I ended up just taking it and reading it. And but it wasn't until probably I always felt like I was a little bit more aware than most people, even though I was very unconscious at the time. I always felt like I had some sort of awareness, but I couldn't really put a finger on it. And now that I'm hearing, when you're going through like an ascension phase, sometimes you hear like really high pitched noises and things like that.
Mm.
I remember lying in bed, like 10 years ago, even longer, and just hearing these noises. And I was like, I thought I'd ruined my hearing from playing in bands all the time. But it wasn't that at all, because it kind of went away, and it started again this year. But so I've always had this thing, but it wasn't until I started working full time that I really started to question mostly just the way of living, mostly just that. Like, I didn't really think there was anything crazy going on, but I woke up one morning hungover. I'd literally just started working full time, and I said to Mum, I was like, "Hey, there has to be more to life than just working a job that you hate and then getting drunk twice, in a row, 2 nights in a row, and then waking up and doing it all again." And that kind of, I guess, was one of the first deep questions that I ever asked myself. But I never really searched for things, I never searched for answers so much. A few years later, actually, no, before that, even my friend gave me the DVD, The Secret. And that was my first kind of foray into that kind of that world, really. Obviously, very skeptical about that when I first saw it, as most people would be. But I gave it a shot, after watching the video, and then in my last semester at university. But then after that, yeah, nothing really happened. It was just I just did the 9 to 5 thing for a really long time. So that was
I know
2000
you
and
said you went to, was it accounting, wasn't it? Did you
yeah, yeah.
like why did you go? Why did you go down that? Was it ever a passion, or was it just
No,
something that
no.
you just got to get a job? Was it, why did you
Yeah,
choose it?
exactly. Yeah, I was 24, I think, when I first started working full time, and the reason I chose accounting as a major is just for job security. I'd heard that it was, biz, boom or bust, every business needs an accountant, right? So that was really the thought process behind it. And, to be honest, that's a terrible reason to pick a job.
But
Like,
you know what? It's almost like a fear. It's a subconscious fear response too, because that's about scarcity. Because you said you've done it for job security, so
right, right.
but
Yeah.
obviously it didn't last too long, did it?
What didn't the job?
The job. So how long were you doing it for?
No, a long time, ages. Yeah. So I was an accountant from 2004 uh, till well, even till 2015 ish.
Fuck,
I
so
was
yeah,
I was an
long time.
accountant, so it was a good 10 or 11 years. And but throughout that time, most of my weekends were just consumed with drinking, and then I moved to London in 2013, and that's when I stopped studying because I had to do my CPA afterwards. After I started working full time, I started doing my CPA, and that took me ages. And then I did that, even though it was terrible for me. But it allowed me to move to London, and that was when I started really. I had more free time, and it was a different city, and probably wasn't drinking as much because even in that year I turned 30 that year, and I wanted to kind of cut back on the drinking anyway. But because it's a new city, you want to be social, you want to go out to different places, you want to meet as many people as possible. So there was still an element of that. But
I thought that's all you do in London is drink.
yeah, no, it's funny because before I left, I bumped into the Frio had got into the grand final that year, and I bumped into a guy I knew in Fremantle. We went to watch it at one of the bars, and he said, yeah, one of his friends went to London and came back with who was overweight, and he had a drinking problem when he came back. And I was like, oh shit, that's not going to be good. But that was kind of one of my biggest worries. I was very fear based at that point in my life, very fear based. Like, I went traveling to the Philippines and in that year as well, and everyone was saying, "Oh, don't get kidnapped when you go there," and that just threw me into a big tailspin. And I was very fear based. So, but when I got to, and I didn't know anything about anything, but I did have some mushrooms when I was in London, in Bali just before going to the Philippines, and it was a really bad experience. But uh, I saw all these patterns in the air. And now I think about it, I think maybe that was because I heard this really good quote. It was like there's no such thing as a bad trip. It's 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 like accelerating your growth or your consciousness or something like that. It's well, that's not it. It's paraphrasing, but looking back, I think maybe those things could have been like, you know, sacred geometry or something, that I was seeing in the air.
I've seen that too. I actually read a book called Holographic Universe, and that's what I saw. It was full pixelated everything, and it even moved my head, and the pictures sort of it took a while for them to form back together.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's almost like, like viewing the Matrix, like seeing
Yeah, it was
stuff.
really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, when I was in London, I just had so much more free time, obviously. But that was when I kind of I started taking care of what I wanted to improve my dating life. So I started going out there and meeting a lot more girls, and taking steps to improve that. But I also had a lot more time, and because I was by myself, pretty much. I mean, I knew some people, but I spent a lot of time researching. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, I'd already known about 9/11 at that point, but that was when I started looking at different things, because there was a London bombing that had happened a few years before,
Yeah.
and all these different school shootings, and the Sandy Hook and everything. And I started noticing some patterns, and obviously with Sandy Hook and the Boston incident, the same person was at both events. That woman,
Yeah.
and I was like,
Yeah. She was at
that's
more than
kind of,
that. I think she was at a
yeah,
few.
she was. She was at least three, I think. Yeah,
I think she
and
was actually. I think she was the partner. I don't know if you remember that Foley guy that got his head decapitated in one of those fake ISIS videos. That was his partner in that as well.
oh right,
Yeah,
yeah.
she kept popping up. Yeah, sorry, go on.
No, it's cool. And we'll get to this in a second, because what I think uh, is, well, I'll say another thing a bit later. But yeah, so I started doing a lot more research, and then I found out about the NWO and in the music industry and all the stuff that they were doing, in that. And I'd heard a little bit about the pedophilia in in Hollywood and stuff like that. I didn't really know it was all connected, but I did connect a few dots, and I was like, why are there so many conspiracies? Like, what's going on? And we spoke about this before. I was like, why are there so many conspiracies? And then I thought, well, what if they're all related in some way? Like, what if,
It's all
because
one.
it doesn't make sense. Like, why would there be so many?
Yeah.
Like, and then, but it wasn't until really last year that I kind of pieced a lot together with all the bullshit that happened with the thing. And when we went into lockdown, uh, in March, that was when I got really suspicious, and it only took me a couple of weeks to figure out what was going on. But yeah, I had some really big kind of awakening experiences. One day I woke up in London. It was June, just before I was about to leave, and I woke up this one morning, and I had like this just tremendous feeling of energy and certainty and confidence and drive that I'd never before experienced. And I just had to do things. I was like, I got to do some stuff. I got to go. I could be like, I felt superhuman, really, for a good few months. And then I came back to Perth, and I worked a crappy job, and it just disappeared. Um, but, and there was in that moment that I was like, I'm not going to be an accountant anymore. Like, I'm going to actually do something about this now, because that was the thing that kind of the tipping point for me. I was like, yeah, I can't keep going like this, doing the same thing over and over and over again and just expecting a different result. And so, yeah, like a month.
So what was your lowest moment? Like you obviously you've been doing this job that you hadn't really had a passion for a long time. But
Yeah,
what was
so many,
what was
so many.
what was there one moment that you just said, "Fuck this! This is like I can't do this anymore," or was it just a
Yeah,
build up and then?
a bit of both. Because I remember being at Crossroads at 2010. Just I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm studying. I put the unit that I was doing. I deferred that for the semester, and I just watched TV like every night after work. I would just watch stupid shows like Jersey Shore and and
I love it.
another, those shows, those cool, like those game shows where you have to do like kind of like Wipeout, where you have all these obstacle courses. I watched,
Yeah.
there was one like that was on that I really liked. But so it's just those two shows, and I guess that was like a crossroad. But I just stayed on the same road, didn't I? I didn't do anything different. There were many times though I was just either in Perth or even in London where I was like, I'm not going to be doing this when I'm 40. And the very first job I ever had in London, I was working at The Economist. It was quite funny, and I looked around at all the people that I was working with, and they're all like, mid-40s and just lifeless, completely lifeless.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's going to be me. If I don't do something, that's going to be me in 15 years, right? Or something like that. And so then I had a job with the NHS very briefly, and that was the worst job I've ever had. And I was just so depressed, man. Even though I was living in a cool city, it was just that 7 hours for the day just drained the crap out of me. I was literally looked at a fucking brick wall every time I looked out the window. There was nothing to look at. And
in fucking miserable old freaking London.
And raining, yeah.
Do you know the other thing, because I lived in Europe as well too, and it sounds cool for a while, but those winters, man, like after a while,
it's pretty hectic.
When the fuck is this going to end? This is it's like it's never going to end.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, they're so cold.
Yeah, so but like, I mean, that's like what I always say too is that you get. You either make the chance, you either make the decision to make change in your own life. If you're not liking it, it's going to be forced upon you anyway. And that's
exactly what's happening now. Yeah.
What's happening in the last 2 years collectively, that we've been given so many opportunities to make change with 9/11, like all the the stuff, the bombing and stuff that's been happening through the Middle East, and we've done nothing about it as well. All these other moral dilemmas that are happening in the world. But then, so if we don't make a change, it's forced upon us, and that's exactly what's happened.
Yeah, and I think that in many ways, you need to first be responsible for yourself, because how can you really it's difficult to go and try to change something else without changing yourself first. That's the whole reason. Like, you look at, I would say that
about changing the world. If you got to look, you got to look at your own flaws first too. 100%.
Absolutely, yeah. Because I don't think I would be doing what I'm doing now if I hadn't first taken the steps to make that change. All those years ago. It hasn't been an easy road, of course. Change never is. But when I moved to Melbourne, I started this business, a life coaching business, and I remember waking up May 14th, 2017, and I had like the opposite feeling of what I'd had just a few years before in London. So I woke up, I was like really, really unconfident, really uncertain, really depressed. And that was like, what I think was this entire time was like different phases of a spiritual awakening, different levels, different phases. And I was just going through a really down phase. And this down phase lasted from May till probably at least, I don't know, November, I think. It was up and down, but it was mostly down. It was like, I had some days, like 1 week I was on top of the world and closing sales in my business. And then the next week was just like, 10K underground.
I think a lot of what depression is people are not on their path.
I think so too.
When you're not on the path, you are miserable. And when you're on the path, the synchronicities start to flow. So I know you said like it happened pretty quick in Melbourne, didn't it? You sort of like, you lost your house, or because I saw you did a video on recently how people because people are really struggling at the moment, and the last couple of weeks, a lot of people are caving. Other people are like, I've only got weeks left of money I can hold out. And that was a good video you did too, because you were sort of relating it back to your own experience that, you'd been through, like everyone's just different, and some people are suffering far worse than we are.
Sure.
But, there's, everyone's suffering is different, and they're still impactful regardless. So, and it's demoralizing too, isn't it? You've obviously moved to a new city, and then you've sort of, it didn't go to what you expected, and you've had to come home, and all that sort of stuff. But it's obviously led you to be doing what you're doing now. So what happened how quick did it happen in Melbourne? And when you decided to move back? Because that was pretty much around the time. Was it
Oh,
just
that was,
prior to COVID?
I
Or?
stayed in Melbourne. So 2017 was when it all fell to shit. I stayed until 2019.
Yeah, yeah,
And like I said in the video, like I had to experience that, I think. It was necessary for my growth. Uh, and I didn't want to move back, home here just because it's like going back to safety,
yeah.
It's like you take the easy way out. Like you can't take the easy way out. And that's the problem that we're facing right now. We've always taken the easy way out, you know. We, we just do that. Path of least resistance. That's what humans do. But until you force yourself to make some changes, then nothing's ever going to happen. Be the change that you want to see in the world is such a powerful quote, and it's so true.
I heard, Tom Barnett.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I heard him say, you just pick up on little things that people say sometimes. I remember he said last year, he goes, he moves every couple of years. Like,
yeah, it's a good idea.
he's obviously just like he's a very sort of free spirit and like very highly intellectual guy. But I love watching the way some of these people live their lives, and what he said that had a very big impact on me when he said that, and I've thought about it a lot, was that anytime he becomes comfortable, and that can be in a location with people, in a job, whatever, he changes. As soon as he's comfortable, then he makes change. And I'm like, that's a pretty crazy way to live. But I think that's a lot of what we're doing down here that we've lost, is that adventure. And that's someone that's not living in fear. He loves a challenge, And it's just like what you said too, like to move back is because I'm thinking about this too. I'm thinking about moving, and the thing that's stopping me is my comfort zone of where I am. Yeah.
Well, man, you should have seen me moving to London. I was a wreck. I was way out of my comfort zone. Like, very, very, I couldn't sleep for weeks, it's just so stressed out. But that made the move to Melbourne so much easier, like it was it was nothing, But you've done it before, so I don't think it's probably going to be as daunting as you think. But it is, when you are in your comfort zone and you have been in there for a long time, then it does make it more challenging.
So if we go forward to like when, 20, end of 29, where you've moved back, and then obviously all this sort of stuff broke out beginning at 2020.
Yeah.
Like what led you to want to start doing videos? And like, because I think you've had a really good impact on people. And I know, like for me, like a reason I started doing it was just I didn't know what else to fucking do, and I was like, I want to do something, but I don't know what to do, like. So at least for me, I felt like that if I put my intent and my energy into something, at least that's something. At least I'm telling my soul, or I'm telling the universe that I want to make change. I want to do something. That was it a similar thing to you? Like, why did you start?
Yeah.
What led you to start doing videos?
I'd already started a YouTube channel probably in 2019, and I was putting out personal development videos and things like that. And
so you just switched it.
I switched it up. At first, I didn't want to become like a conspiracy channel, but it got to the point where I even posted a couple of videos when it first kicked off, in March last year.
Yeah.
And it's quite funny because I didn't know. I wasn't expecting. You never know what to expect when you put out a video. And I put out a video, and I had one of my friends just completely berate me for it, and just it triggered him. And I was like, Jesus Christ! I actually took the video down from my Facebook page, left it on YouTube, but that kind of stopped me, for a while. And I put out the odd post here and there, but it got to February this year. I was like, nah, I got to do something. Really, it came down to, do I want to be silent in this time, and do I want to be on the right side of history? I think it's what it really
you touched on there too. Is like I had the same thing too. Like I put up posts on that for years, but like when I started doing videos, I didn't tell anyone, and like I hope no one I knew ever saw it, which eventually they did. But it's the fear of what other people think, isn't it?
Correct.
And that's such a big thing, and it's I haven't even fully stripped that away, but I think the process of doing this has has definitely helped. So, how's that changed for you? Like, do you give a fuck now, or do you?
A
I mean,
little bit, a little
a little
bit,
bit.
not as much. Uh, and like you, I just kind of block some people on Facebook so they don't see them anyway. But because it's easier that way. But at the same time, those are
But
the people we need
you
to
know,
reach the
you know
most.
the
You
ones to
know.
block. You know the ones to block too, and they're for like professional reasons or family or whatever. And it's not because you don't um, want them to know what you want to know, what you want to know, but it's because certain people they're never going to budge with their beliefs. So it's just better that they don't see that, and they'll see it in their own time anyway, won't they?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's far more impactful for you to put out a video and to have people see it but not comment on it, just so they're seeing it.
Yeah.
You know, uh, because the ones that do comment, you've triggered them to a point where they're actually going to take some action to, you know, to say something, right? So it's interesting, and those are the ones. Those are the ones that will probably never change,
Yeah.
even when they're faced with the truth, if that ever happens, and whenever it ever happens, which I think it will. We can get onto that later, but uh, yeah, man, it's the give a fuck muscle, or the give, yeah, it's really don't give a fuck muscle is something that we all need to strengthen in many ways, because you can't chase your dreams, you can't pursue your aspirations with if you give a fuck. Like, even just I put out a business post on Facebook a couple of months ago, and I had some people commenting on it, and you know, stupid comments about, can I please have a pro-vaccine marketing campaign? And I was like, you know, sorry, man, I don't do propaganda, but you know, those are the kinds of things like, ages ago that probably would have derailed me. You know, you put out a post, I'm trying to be serious, trying to build a bit, you know, do something positive, build a business, you know, make more money, whatever, and someone says something stupid like that, and then you know, we can't let that affect us, you know, because that's like one or two people, you know, out of, it's always the small percentage of people that make the biggest difference in this world. uh,
That's how they've set social media up too, because the majority of it is self censorship. Because I mean, I get a lot of people all the time message me, and they would never post anything, and they're like, "I really like what you post," and I'm like, "Why the fuck?" But
yeah, man, yeah,
it's
correct.
because they've showed that if you post, all the girls that post their ass pictures and shit like that, because they're going to get a positive response if you post that. If you post something that's controversial, you're going to
Mm.
get somewhat of a negative response, which is then triggering you to not do so. But I remember reading David Icke's book, and he said, he went through this huge period of being publicly berated for years, and he was a lunatic, and he said it was just horrible. But he says,
Yeah,
life gives you your best lessons disguised as your worst nightmare at the times, and he also says about how spiritual awakening is not about gaining. It's usually about tearing things away from you, and it's usually not a very nice process. It's a destructive process, because as you're
yeah,
wanting to, if you're asking to be more awake, you got to be very careful, because what it means is tearing down everything in your life, and that can be job, friends, family, everything. So, like, what have you? Did you experience that? Have you like what have you lost over the? I mean, you've already said a lot anyway, but and a lot of that, yours going back a while, I guess, with your job and everything. A lot of that has been torn away. But have you seen much of that in the last 2 years since this has been happening? Is if more things have been torn away, and I guess other things come in and replace them as well.
yeah. No, that's a really good point. uh, So I think, and I alluded to in that video, but basically that video that I put out, that was when I had, I would say, one of the biggest portions of the spiritual awakening. It wasn't until 2019 that I realized that I'd even had one, you know? And so it took me a while, but I think I'd probably already had it in 2018, because I like, it was death, man. I really, it really, 2017 was absolutely the worst year I've ever had. I was earning crap money. All my money was just going to rent and expenses, and I just had nothing. I had nothing. Like, my job was shit. I got kicked out of my house. I lost that job, and then, but I was just, I'd come home, and I'd be like, what am I even doing? You know, like, what am I?
Yeah.
If I'm just going to work a crap job, and I've had heaps of crap jobs before, but you know, I'm still doing it, right? Like, if I'm just going to work a crap job and just come home and be broke, like this,
What's the
you know, what
point?
am I even doing? And so it was really good. Like, even though it was really bad, like I said, I do it all again, because when you have that death, and then you have the rebirth, it's completely magical. Like, I don't know how to describe it. And so to answer your question, like in the last, because I'd already had the death and because I'd already come to terms with a lot of things, and and it even accepted the fact that I may never travel again, you know. Uh, when you can accept certain things in your life, it gives you so much power. You know, like they say that you before you incarnate on this earth or in anywhere, right? Your soul gets to choose your parents. It gets to choose. You kind of already have an idea about what your life's going to be like before you even do it, right? And and people hear that and they go, why would I choose my parents, or why would I choose
Mm.
the life that I had? Why would I choose to be abused from a young age or whatever? And the soul makes so many decisions that a human just can't understand, right?
You can't look at it from the ego level of the
No,
incarnation. It's been
you can't. And but when I found that out, I just felt super empowered. I was like, I made this decision myself, you know, whatever it is. Like to, you know, everybody has their challenges, you know, and but because I made that decision to do whatever the hell it is that I'm doing and go through all the stuff that I went through, you just feel so empowered. And so over the last 2 years, I haven't really had to lose anything, you know. I don't really go out much anyway. I'm mostly at home. Even when we were in lockdown, nothing changed for me.
Yeah.
I just I couldn't go to the gym. That was the biggest thing that changed for me. I had to go to work out in the park. And if I couldn't do that, then I'd go to a university and where
Yeah.
no one could see me, you know.
Yeah.
But that was the biggest thing that changed.
But that's a lot. I think, like what you alluded to too, was that a lot of that had already been stripped away from you too, and I felt the same with myself as well too. You know, I lost a lot of like friends and stuff, and it's been quite hard having these opinions for a long time and trying to speak and trying to operate in that world. But yeah, like
Yeah,
what was I going to say? Oh fuck, I've lost it now. But yeah, about the incarnation thing too. Like, 'cause, I had a chat with Rachel Vaughan, and she mentioned this too. And like, you think like, who the hell would choose to be abused by a child? But then if
yeah,
you look at the greater picture and like the work that she's doing now to expose it,
right,
you know,
right,
that's the role she's playing. Uh,
exactly.
so
Yeah,
you know,
because anybody can take their experience and go one or two ways with it. They can either be in victim mode, which is very easy to do when you've had that done to you, or you can be the victor and do what Rachel's doing, or Jeanette Archer, or anybody else who's in that situation, right?
yeah. Yeah,
Mm,
and I mean, like obviously, like and the other thing too is like about losing and then gaining. Like the last 2 years with all the stuff going on, it's been the best 2 years of my life. I've never, you
yeah,
know, like it just, mostly for, you know, like I did this affirmation right on New Year's Eve 2020. I was in Thailand. I was at this big party, and I
right,
just went away into the bush. Spent New Year's Eve by myself. I didn't tell anyone, just ducked off, and because I wanted to do this affirmation, and I just said I want to get in touch with like-minded people. More, that was my main
okay,
thing,
yeah,
because you know, like it had been difficult that I've had to have friends, but I can't really talk about a lot of this stuff. And then it literally just occurred so quick. And for me, that's been the best thing, is like connecting with people like yourself and so many other people that I didn't know 2 years ago. It's you know, it's been
yeah.
amazing. So it depends how you look at it, and that I mean, I guess we can. Is there anything else you wanted to say about like have you how have you seen your growth even in the last 2 years? Have you know you continue, because people say, oh, I'm awake. Well, what the fuck does that mean? It's like there's so many levels. It's like it's awakening. You
It's
know
a
more.
continual journey, I think.
Yeah. So like, how
Yeah,
have you seen that in the last couple of years for yourself? Like, have you had any big moments, or is it?
yeah, I think it's difficult to say. I think once you have, I think once you have the the big spiritual awakening, then you've already hit a certain level, right? Yes, you can grow
There's little
more,
things coming in all the time.
but it's not like unless you hit reach enlightenment, then I don't know if you're going to experience a similar growth as you did when you had those moments, you know.
Yeah.
So, but in saying that, there are other things that I've done, like started putting out covers and doing my own music, and that's something that I never would have thought ever was possible, with the mindset that I had, and that's why it never happened, because so it's taken a long time to get there, but I think that would be one of the biggest growth things that I've experienced this year is just putting my music out there and putting out covers, because it's something I've always wanted to do, but it just my programming held me back for so long, right? So yeah, and I mean, and also just to touch on losing things and stuff. Like I don't know if I've necessarily lost any friends over this stuff that I post, although maybe I have. It's hard to say, but because I'd already moved away and started kind of doing my own thing and not doing and not really hanging around those people anymore anyway.
Yeah.
It was like if I ever put out some stuff and they got really angry at me or didn't want to be friends with me, which I don't think, because we haven't had like a full on argument, but you can see how it would happen with this kind of work. Then it's like, I wouldn't say not a loss, but it's not something a that I we would be not accustomed to. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
So
think
it's like setting your life up in such a way, like all this, like I alluded to in the video, all the work that you do or don't do really just sets you up for other things in life. So my 2020 was 2017 for me. For most people, 2020,
yeah,
where everything fell to shit, I already had that a few years
yeah,
before. So when 2020 came around, nothing happened, really.
yeah,
And like you, the last 2 years have been the best 2 years of my life so far. Like this year was better than last year, and 2020 was better than 2019. So I know I know that could sound bad to some people because they're experiencing something a lot worse. But I just go back to you have to set your life up the way you wanted to, and you have to go through the pain in order to get there. And just because somebody chose to do it a few years before, like they're not being forced to make any change now.
yeah,
They put themselves through it on by themselves.
that's it. And I think that's why you're so calm, and I feel the same too. Is because I think you've got a greater understanding. You've been through that stuff too. Not to say that you're not going to go through more, but I think if you've got that connection to your soul, you're never quite worried, because first of all, you don't fear death, and then
Right.
you don't fear
It's a big one.
a lot of other things too. So
I
yeah,
think it's a big one as well. Like a lot of people,
death.
uh, people will probably think you're nuts if you said, I'd rather take a bullet than take the vaccine. But,
Yeah.
you know, but it's true,
Right.
because it's your own terms. You got to do things on your own terms, period. And if somebody's forcing you to do something, uh, you know, it, you're not going to be doing things that your soul wants you to do, are you? If you succumb.
Yeah. 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 I think last year, like, too, like I actually felt guilty that I was, because like the stuff was like starting to happen. I thought this was going to happen another 10 years, and I'm like, oh fuck, it's
Mm,
happening now,
yeah,
and like I was just
yeah.
filled with like excitement, and everyone's like, you know what I mean? I'm like, oh, the fucking shit's unraveling. It's like, oh yeah, they're going for it. This is good, Fuck.
Yeah,
So, yeah, and like I felt guilty because I knew like a lot of other people are struggling, and even now too. But I think you got it. Once people lose all their like I told you, if I lose my house, I don't give a fuck at the moment. I do not care. Like as long as I've got my health and I can connect with people and I can see a light at the end of this tunnel, that's kind of all that matters. But if I wanted to ask you too, because I put up a video the other day. Everyone keeps saying, "Oh, it is what it is," right? I kept hearing this mantra all the time,
yeah. I saw that video. Yeah,
and a lot of I really noticed it after people had their second jab, and I've had some people get really aggressive at me. Um,
yeah.
I'm putting people's lives in danger and all this sort of fucking nonsense, and repeating these government mantras. Like, have you seen that as well? Because I had a conversation with someone just before, and they've said the same thing. So have you noticed that in anyone in particular or not?
Only yesterday when I saw a video, I read it is what it is somewhere. I don't know whether it was in a post or on a media, like a MSM news site. I'm not sure, but I did see it yesterday. But other than that, no, I haven't heard anybody say it. Um, but it's so interesting. Like with you mentioned light at the end of the tunnel, and we're at this juncture now, which is really interesting because you guys have had your Freedom Day, right, in Victoria, and I kind of wonder like what's going to happen because now that New South Wales and Victoria can do what they want to a degree. I mean, I heard in November 20 they're going to shut off the everything to the unjabbed, but now that they're out and about and they've already had like an outbreak in one of these gyms in New South Wales, in Sydney, or I think it was somewhere in New South Wales, 15 people, 15 cases, and it was only people that had the thing that were going there. What are they going to do? Like, can they lock us? Can they lock them down again because of an outbreak? Even though they're like, or are they going to make up something else?
I mean, it's absolutely the legislation they're pushing through in Victoria is just fucking beyond terrifying. And I can tell you here locally. So apparently, we're opened up and we had Freedom Day. I've got less freedom than we've ever had the whole way through this thing. Like, and like,
yeah, right.
And
right.
so we had. I mean, like, because I worked in a lot of the schools and I know a lot of teachers, and all the schools now, like half the teachers I'm talking to, they kept getting sent home. Where I'm in isolation, some kid had COVID, blah blah blah, and this didn't happen the entire way through the pandemic. It's only just happened in the last 2 weeks since we've opened up, and
it makes no sense, does it?
Parents are contacting me; their kids have been sent home. They've been told they can't go back to school without a test, and it's like and I think a lot of this is cover for because there has been teacher walkouts from schools. So I don't know if they're doing it to keep the numbers down, or they're obviously pushing to get the kids jabbed.
Yeah.
So yeah, look, it's just been madness. But unfortunately, it still has to get worse because like, we still haven't, unfortunately, seen the response. But like, how do you see? Like, I mean, I listened to Bossy's thing with Sasha Stonia, so I think you listened to it as well, didn't you? And he spoke about how he has to go back to the magistrate on January 4th, and he said, "Well, I don't expect that I'll be needing to go there by then." Like, how crazy do you think this is? Are we actually going to see a build-up towards Christmas? Like, what do you expect to see? I know we deliberate on this all the time and never really.
It's hard to say. It's hard to say, isn't it?
How are you seeing it?
Well, I don't know because I've heard November 2nd. I've also heard November 11th as key dates, but you hear all these dates and sometimes nothing ever happens. So, but Rosie did say
another eclipse coming up in November too, and you know that they always try, like all these lockdowns and stuff, they always sort of, it always goes to the next level on an eclipse, doesn't it? So
we've had a few, we've had a few.
Sorry, go on. Go.
I don't know, man. I think Bosie said 4 to 6 weeks of pain, roughly, and then he said we'll ascend from there. So to me, that means mid-December-ish, just in time for Christmas, hopefully. Who was it? -48, maybe. There was a meme with JFK Jr. In a Santa Claus outfit, and it said Christmas is coming early or something like that. I think -48 did that, posted that. So I don't know, but what I do know is that a lot of, so many celebrities are popping up on Telegram now. Kaylee's got one, Kaylee Kennedy, and
but does it come up as Kaylee Kennedy, not Kaylee McEnany?
Yeah, it's interesting. and but Keanu Reeves had like a couple of weeks ago he said I'm going to be releasing stuff this week, and nothing happened. So I don't know, man. But also Durham released some stuff. There was a video. Did you see that? Durham released quite a few indictments.
Well,
recently.
I got one on my phone now too, because this was the third. So we had the two indictments of Clinton lawyers, and now there's a third one now. Former Clinton Global Initiative co-chair Stephen Bachar has been indicted on felony and theft of security and fraud counts. So this was just yesterday.
Yeah.
And then I got this other one here. They said Victorian. So yesterday they were refusing to name the deaths, right? If they were vaccinated or not. They just
sure.
They said we're not naming them. And the other one I found.
So they just didn't say.
No. And I'm in the process.
Why would they?
I'm doing this video
obviously.
on Dean Henry, who's this child abuse survivor, and So I was looking at one of the people he names in his police report was Ron Woodham, which was he was the head of corrections in New South Wales. And the
Okay.
person that did his eulogy, I only just found this out. He just died a couple of months ago, right? So this is an
Okay.
Australian
That's interesting.
VIP pedophile that's died in the last couple of months. I didn't know this. But
Right.
Ray Hadley, the 2GB guy, did his eulogy, who's also
Okay.
been who's also been named. And
Yeah. Right. It's interesting.
like
You've,
there's so many little things like that. But I'm hoping that the Durham report, because it's not going to be a big one in America if they name Alexander Downer. People go, who the hell's Alexander Downer? They don't, he's a nobody. But
yeah.
he's big fry over here. And
Yeah.
there's one, I put up this video of Joe Hockey, Tony Podesta, and
I saw that one. Yeah.
Fortescue,
And Josh.
what's
Yeah.
his name? Friesenberg,
Yeah.
the treasurer. So he had two treasurers there, meeting with Tony Podesta. And then I went back and found the old, that Trump had corresponded with Joe Hockey when he was treasurer. And Trump had put out this tweet saying that with the Mueller probe, when he was under investigation, he said that Mueller needs to be looking at the UK and Australia, not Russia.
Right. Right.
And
I think I remember that.
indicating Alexander Downer too. So, fuck, man, that could be the first big one of the Durham report indictments that they could name publicly, because he's not that big of a name in America, but this could send ripple effects here. And if you listen to what Bossy said, that he sort of said that Australia could lead the way, and maybe this is part of the information that we need to get out to see people to see how corrupt the Australian government is.
Yeah, man. Well, obviously, Gladys is having her thing, and then Dom is also has some sort of investigation going on too, and Andrews. So it's interesting. I mean, you would think that people would look at that and go, I wonder why they're being investigated, rather than saying, oh, we just want Gladys back. Like, what's going on there? Like, today on the news, they were that guy, I don't know who he is, Gladys's boyfriend or whoever that guy she had an affair with.
Yeah.
The headline said Gladys is being grilled, and then they cut to some footage of somebody asking him some questions, and the questions are like, "Were you going to have were you thinking about having a child with her and getting married?" I'm like, who the fuck wants to know that? Like, we want to know about the money exchanging hands
it's fucking
and other things.
pathetic too, isn't it? It's just pathetic.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, making a mockery of the whole process. Why would they show that on TV? Who cares? Like,
it's like when they're asking Joe Biden about ice cream and stuff, all these fucking ridiculous questions, or what, the decorations in the White House or whatever.
But that's different. That's a different thing altogether, isn't it? I mean, but I understand what you mean, and because with the Biden thing, I mean, that's just funny. Did you see that one where he was like, why don't we sell everything we own and give it to a raccoon?
I haven't seen that.
Some video.
Mate, that's like, I mean, people have these rants about Biden. I'm like, how can you rant about this guy? He's clearly a fucking actor or a CGI. He's not like, that ain't Biden. I don't give a fuck what anyone says. It's not Biden. There's multiple Bidens too, that brings us to the other thing too. It's like, how much in control is the alliance with this sort of stuff? And, the collateral damage that's going on through the jab and all this sort of thing. It makes you think of the bigger picture. And I've come to the conclusion that the only thing that can actually change this satanic force getting rid of it from the planet is because these people can just incarnate back into bodies again. And actually, it's an energetic change that has to happen of us rising. And I think that's why they keep baiting us to stand up, because they're like, fucking stand up, because that collective energy is what makes the change. It's not just them going and doing it. Or maybe that's the last kick in the guts that it needs to kill it is the people standing up. But then again, it's like, if you want the people to stand up, fucking release some information. And the people, so it's frustrating.
Yeah. Like, release something in the MSM. That would get people to stand up real fast, don't you think? Like, release something about Fauci or I don't know, anything. Like,
and they do,
maybe
but
a hot mic of something like that would be good. Like, But no, you're right, because the alliance and even the off-worlders that are working on our behalf, assuming there are some, they can only do so much. Like they're doing all the stuff behind the scenes that we can't do, but we have to stand up for ourselves. We have to be the ones to really move the needle for ourselves, right? Because nobody else can, and that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, it's free will, and that's natural law, and that's why I loved what when Bossy did that video to the magistrate. Like I'm keeping that
Yeah,
video for like if I ever have to go to court, I'm just fucking reading that verbatim because
it's a good one.
I was listening to that and I told people I said listen to actually what he's saying. He's he's not trying to operate within their system, within their bullshit, maritime admiralty law bullshit system. Anyway, he's just straight. If
Right.
you listen to what he's saying, he's talking about natural law. That's what he's
Mm,
talking about. He's like, I don't give a
yeah.
fuck. I don't give a fuck what you say. These people are invalid. The whole system's invalid.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point because JCK said something similar in a video recently. She said, if you're in a position where you're forced to take a thing to keep your job or whatever, you're staying in the system. You're not
Yeah,
you're not being sovereign, and you're not doing the things that you need to do in order to move yourself forward. Like you're just even what I mean. You're just going along to get along and just staying in exactly where you are, right? And that's not what we can't do that. The whole system needs to break, and it's interesting. I mean, it's broken anyway, but and it probably has been for a long time. But I think that that's the thing, and we have the power. Like we really do, especially when it comes to purchasing power. If we all just bought stuff from farmers markets and independently owned supermarkets,
yeah,
like the big ones wouldn't be. And I have shares in these big ones. I didn't know, but I know what I know now. But that you know what I mean? Like we have the power to really really make the change. Like everything is owned by small handful of companies.
yeah,
Like even IGA, which is an independent, kind of supermarket, like the parent company is owned by the same people. You know, I
yes,
did a bit of research on all these companies, and but we have the power. And to go back to what you were saying about the alliance being in control and stuff, like Michelle Fielding reckons they've been in not complete control, but in some sort of control for the last 15 years. And I guess it kind of makes sense when you think about like that woman who appeared at all the events, because if that is true, then maybe they put her there on purpose, to wake people up, because we wouldn't have known otherwise, right? We wouldn't have known that they're using crisis actors unless it was blatantly obvious, and they put this same woman in
it
3 or 4 events to
makes me
to
think
show
like
you.
yeah, like the Boston bomb. I don't remember if you remember when the Boston bombing happened. It was pulled apart within 2 hours of it happening. Now, the only way that I don't know if you remember, it was, and Alex Jones was the one that they pulled it apart the most, InfoWars, but it had to be, it was all leaked, right? It was leaked to the independent media
Right.
within, it was seriously like an hour after the bombing. They were showing the bags of the
With the yeah,
bags of
with
the
the
agents.
funny, yeah,
They proved that it wasn't the two, um,
with the guys.
the two brothers or whatever, and
Yeah.
it was just so blatant. It was, and like they've gone, here's the evidence. This is where it is. How do you pull that apart in an
Stuff
hour?
comes out really fast.
That's what I mean. Like, that can only be done by intelligence agencies' assets that were working on behalf of getting this information out. And I mean, Sandy Hook was the
Yeah,
other
yeah,
one too.
true.
But like,
Yeah.
you're right about like
Same with the London one, because there were so many anomalies with that.
oh yeah.
And
But
and I
Boston was really when it switched because they were killing people in these false flags, and then
right, right.
Boston was the first one, around the first one where they start like, and I think they do kill people too. They do a combination of the two, and that's about fucking up all the researchers too, because some people go, oh, it's all fake, and then they use that against us to call us bloody conspiracy theorists and all the rest. But like Boston
Yeah,
was the first one where there was just blatant fake actors in there and fake blood and fake
yeah.
everything, And then they ran with that theme for years, didn't they? After that,
Yeah, man, there was a really interesting piece of footage from that scene where it was on the media too, and there was supposed to be some blood on the floor on the ground, and this guy walked past it, and he moved it because
Uh,
it was some sort of graphic thing, some sort of fake picture or whatever. And he moved the blood as he walked past it. It was really interesting, and that was on TV. And because I don't know, like you think like because 9/11 was the last big one where they used real people, right?
well, they did
And
do the Madrid bombing, the Bali bombing, and
oh, true, yeah, yeah,
and seven
yeah.
seven. But yeah, but after them, yeah, I mean, 9/11 was the big one. Yeah,
Remember that? Remember the Charlie Hebdo thing in
that was
France?
ridiculous. Yeah,
That was so stupid. There were, I remember having some conversation with some people, and this was when I was living in London, I think, when it happened. And I was talking to some friends from Perth who were also living in London, and I was like, "Did you see this one of the so-called terrorists walk up to a dude point blank with a fucking assault rifle,
right in his
shoot
head,
him in the head, no blood,
nothing.
nothing, no blood." And I was saying this to them, and they were just all laughing at me, and I was like, "Can't you see it's bullshit?"
Yeah.
And it's like, "Nah, you're insane."
I was so like I don't know if you remember the Charlie Hebdo one too. There was a guy hanging from the. He was hanging out his apartment building with one arm for like 5 minutes. Like you can't do
No,
that.
I didn't see that.
It was fucking ridiculous. But and I don't know if you remember the time they had on the papers in France was Je suis Charlie, which is like Jesus Charlie, right? They kept putting all these clues
Okay.
in there. And I don't know if you follow Ole Demigard's work, he was showing that every terror attack they did, they have clues in each terror attack to where the next one's going to be. And
Right.
he was
Okay.
able to predict uh, dozens of these to the day or to the month of when they're going to do it. And I
Wow. Okay.
believe that he halted a lot of these from happening. There was even one where the the guy in Las Vegas got shot dead, and the blood pattern on the ground, mind you,
Mm.
all the bullets on the ground were above the blood with no blood on them. But the blood pattern was this perfect location in Florida, which hinted to the Pulse nightclub shooting, which they did shortly
Okay.
after. But like, and
Well, yeah. I mean,
even like the Melbourne, I don't know if you remember the Melbourne car attack, they started with at Flinders Street and zoomed in and looked like Big Ben, right? At the start of the amateur footage.
okay.
And that like hinted to the next, they had the London stabbing on the bridge or Westminster attack or whatever it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
I remember that.
but
I
this,
was
like,
in Melbourne
people are going
when
to have to
that
realize
car
that
happened.
this whole history of terrorism, of these terror attacks, are fucking bullshit. And Ole
Yeah.
said that he's looked at all of these for years, and he has had not yet found one terror attack that was real,
Real one.
according to
Yeah.
him. Not one.
Yeah. I heard it was something like 95% or something a fake.
Yeah,
But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's 100. I mean, all the ones we see, even the school shootings, like in The Dark Knight, they had that map where they had Sandy Hook on the map, and he pointed right to it. Like, you can't make that up. And then in Colorado, it's the no, it wasn't Colorado.
Aurora,
Yeah,
Aurora.
Aurora, yeah,
I was on the
in
Batman.
Colorado. Yeah, same movie. There's another one that happened in the next movie. So yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Like, but you tell people that, and you're like, oh,
It's too much for people. This is the barrier that people have to cross eventually, and they're going to be forced to. Is that these people don't have your best interests at heart. They lie, they cheat, they steal, they fake everything. They'd kill your mother in a heartbeat. They rape children. These
mm,
this is what people need
and
to.
eat them.
And our entire everything you've held on dear was fake. And like for us, I'm glad that we went through this many years ago, because it's not. We're going to have to play a different role, aren't we? Then, so like, how do you see your role in the future? Like, what do you want to do? When and if things sort of settle, and like the whole world's going to be different. Like, what do you see yourself doing? Have you even
It's really difficult. It's really. I've given a lot of thought, because on one hand, I had this really good idea. uh, if like all the Nasara Jasara stuff happens and we all had a load of money, because I've got some foreign currencies and things, then I had this idea. It's going to take a lot of time, a lot of resources, a lot of manpower and stuff. Um, but imagine if like uh, if if I could have like an animal sanctuary with like with a recycling plant next to it, and then homeless people could work there, and they they live there for free because they work and they do stuff. Like it solves so many problems, you know. Uh, so that was one idea. But in terms of the role that you would play, it really until we cross that path, until we get to that bridge, it's hard to say, isn't it? Because no doubt there are going to be a lot of people that are in despair and really going to need some help. You know, is it going to be some kind of counseling type thing? Maybe, you know, there are going to be, you know, I would imagine that, that a lot of people would end it, you know, because I felt like ending it, you know, in that period of time that I put myself through, and this is going to be far worse than that, I think, for people who aren't ready. You know, you're never going to be ready, but you know what I mean. Like this is
It's
going
going
to
to
be
be
bad.
absolute shock. Like David Wilcock always says, if you throw up, you feel better. And like, yeah, there has to be this collective fucking vomiting of
Purging, yeah.
of absolute shock of what this is. But I guess it's about
It's monumental. Like I'm still learning new stuff every day about little things, you know, and I feel like I know a fair bit, but there's so much, you know, little things that you go, oh, wow, like that's I can't believe that. It's like every little thing that exists in society is some way a small piece of the much larger puzzle, isn't it? Even things you wouldn't expect, like blood transfusion or organ donation, you know, like it's all to push this or to make money or whatever, like to, you know.
yeah. I mean, I'm ready for my belief systems to be torn down too, whatever they may be. And that's like I don't hold on to anything as 100% truth. I've got my own feelings about who I am and what we are. And I think in the most simplest form, we kind of know that, and you can feel into that through the heart as well. But as far as the details to the rest of it, I don't know how much I've been fucking played either. Like, who knows?
Yeah, yeah.
And that even if information does come out, I'm not taking that as 100% either. Big,
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? I'm not, because
no, that's a good point.
I told this guy at my work, and he's like, I was saying, oh, you know, he's like, oh, fuck Trump and all that, and I'm like, I said, mate, you got no idea. I said, in years' time, you'll be fucking worshipping Trump, and I'll still have discernment about him. Because I
Yeah,
was just trying to play on that, because he just, you know, he's a full lefty and everything. And I just like try and put counter moves going, you know, like what Trump did here actually wasn't too bad. Do you know what I mean? But I remember saying, yeah,
yeah.
you'll be worshipping him and I'll still be, because you can see, because, yeah. But I guess that's, that whole belief system needs to be sort of torn down too, because I think we hold the truth as well. You know, we've all got the truth within us.
Right. And but yeah, David Neeks has been putting out a lot of stuff recently about what you've just mentioned, how what we believe could, I mean, it's very possible. What could be not the real truth. I mean, who really knows what the real truth is?
Yeah.
But you know, what we've been led to believe could be another deception in and of itself, and then there's something else. And how the hell would you know? But one thing I do know for sure is that it's not about a virus. You know, like that's, you know, whatever we believe may not be the truth, but in this moment, it's definitely not. It definitely is, if you know what I mean.
And
Because
that's what we've got. You've got to go off your innate instincts too, and you're feeling. You got to feel into things and trust your intuition. That's the real knowledge.
yeah, yeah, it's crazy, man. I really don't know what to think. We were talking about this a few weeks ago about how there could be a different NWO, and they're just ushering in a different one, and who knows really what the plan is. Um, could
But
it be?
that's why you
Could
don't. You're not. Oh, sorry. You go.
could it be though that in order to get us to this point, because you think about it, like I heard that the Earth was at a point where it was shifting in vibration, and because humanity wasn't ready at the time, they had to have a cataclysm and wipe and start again, right? So if that's true, then could it be that there's like a good AI or a good alien race or off-world race or whatever you want to call it,
Mhm.
that's utilizing the bad race to get us to this point? Because we wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for this. You know what I mean? we wouldn't be at this point if it wasn't for all the stuff that's been happening and for the people controlling the way they have been. So could it be that yes, there is going to be another NWO, but it's actually a good one, and then but they had to get us to a point where we were actually being able to, where we're conscious enough to to not have a cataclysm and wipe it out again. Because every time that happens, you're talking thousands and thousands of years, right? And
Yeah.
and so maybe that there's good, this is just a theory that I just came up with, but maybe
I like it.
yeah, maybe there's a good let's just say it's God or whatever, and he wants to get us to a level, but in order for us to get to this level, we have to go through a big fucking awakening, and that's what's happening now.
Yeah.
And he's going to use any tool that he can to help us get there, and it just so happens that it's what we're experiencing now. That could be a possibility.
Yeah, I like that. And so that's what I was thinking, revolution, right? Too, because if you keep going the cycle, revolution is not good, because revolution just means you keep coming back again. Like we want,
Yeah.
we want evolution, not revolution. But yeah, that's the stuff I'm interested in too, because on one level, yes, the Satanists and the fucking reptilians and all the rest of it, we contracted them here too, and we've contracted them through a victim mentality that's allowed them to be here. But yeah, like I'm quite wary of a utopian new world order coming in too. But I think it's quite simple. Like you'll be able to see it if it happens anyway, because like 'cause you have these we've been a huge period of darkness, right? And then we're coming back.
Mm.
But what sometimes can do that, there can be an imbalance of light. We can go, you know what I mean? It's good to be wary. I think my biggest fear, if and when they sort of do take the deep state down, is the AI. I'll be very keen to watch what's going to happen with the AI, because AI does exist within the universe and it can be used effectively. But I wouldn't be taking any injection, regardless of who does it. So yeah, I guess
Yeah.
we'll just have to see how it plays out, because there is talk of like therapeutics and stuff for people that have got this shot, but how much can be reversed as far as the graphene and the nanos that people have got in their bodies? Because for me, they've almost, you've almost consented to selling a part of your soul to the AI by doing that. I don't know if that can be reversed or not. I don't know. Who knows? But I guess it's a consent thing for me too, because I thought if they pinned me down and injected me, and I fought to my last breath not to get it, but I still got injected, it doesn't matter that I've been injected, because on the soul level, I didn't contract,
Right. Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah. No. I agree with that. I mean, I always want to know how long this whole V agenda is going to play out. Both agendas, to be honest. I mean, the bat story and the new V, because it's like, people are fucking dropping dead. They're like flies. People are just, and
It's really out of control at them. It's out of control at the moment, isn't it? The number of these stories coming in, and I'm hearing them firsthand from people I know. It's not.
Yeah, and that's just a tiny percentage, right?
Yeah.
Like it's mind blowing.
But it's almost necessary, isn't it? Because it's like, what the fuck has it got to take? Because some people that have been fucked
unfortunately,
up with the second jab, they're not getting the third one, and the more that they keep doing it, the more you're going to get people pulling away, and it literally is a matter of time before the whole thing falls apart, isn't it? So
yeah, because you would never get as many people that took the first to take the second, and so on and so forth, because people will pass away, people get injured, people just don't want it anymore because they can see what's going on.
Yeah.
So eventually they're going to run out of steam, right?
Yeah, they're going to have to push something else too. Oh, we might finish up there. I got to go do some stuff anyway. But thanks for sharing your story. I don't know, we didn't go too far into it, did we? But I think it's like, if people I love your work and your channel, and particularly I always gain a lot just more out of not just information, but hearing people's own stories, and I think people can get a lot of comfort out of that too, and they can also relate. I think it's more powerful than information a lot of the time, isn't it? That's what I've always found. So, if any of my subs that haven't subbed to David, go, because he got a heap of fucking really good guests you get on too, and yeah,
Thank you.
you just
Yeah, you too.
doing an awesome job, man. And I'm like, I hopefully when all this shit fucking when we can travel again too, I've got you on my list to go over to Perth or buddy, who knows, we might go meet up in Asia or something, man. I think we said that once.
Yeah, that'd be good.
That would be
Yeah,
fucking
for sure.
cool to go get out of here and fucking enjoy ourselves.
Yeah, sounds good, man. Thanks for having me on.
No worries, mate. All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Peace.
Peace.